As an American who's been living in Italy for more than 5 years now, I still get struck with so many reverse culture shocks every time I go back to visit the US. And the more I travel to different countries and the more I interact with other people from around the world, the more I realize that the culture in America, it's almost like being in a toxic relationship. It's really hard to see out of it unless you physically remove yourself from the situation. These are 7 things that are seen as normal and that I thought were normal growing up in the US, but are completely insane in the rest of the modern world. Number 1 is the blind patriotism, and some might call it nationalism that is instilled in us from a young age. In the US, I think the focus, especially in history classes, is on how we contributed positively to the world. But there's a lot of really dark things about US history that are just sort of glazed over in our education. So people don't really know what the rest of the world is like because the focus is on the US. One tradition that I've always thought was really strange, I don't know if it's an official regulation, but every day from the age of 5 or 6 all the way through high school, everyone has to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, which is this poem or chant, I guess. We all memorize it. We have to put our hand over our heart and look at the American flag, and we recite this pledge to our country. I don't know when it started, but I think that's one thing that has never been questioned or argued against. You would get in trouble if you didn't stand or put your hand on your heart or if you didn't say anything. And I always felt like it was a weird thing, but I always did it because I wanted to be a good student and I didn't want to cause problems. And it was a huge problem if you didn't do it, even though technically I believe it goes against the First Amendment to force all children to recite a certain chant every morning. Things that we do in the US are just very contradictory sometimes. It's like people are in this competition for showing their patriotism. You have people who hang flags outside their houses. I didn't realize this was not normal until I moved out of the US and in other countries. I mean, you might see a flag at like a post office or a government building, but people don't hang flags from their cars or wear t-shirts with their nationality's flags. And we just put flags everywhere in the US. It's part of this whole patriotism thing. In other countries, it is normal to question your government more and to learn about more than one side of history. Especially in Europe, we are so close to other countries. We are on borders of other countries. Most people actually end up learning other languages and traveling to other countries. I think seeing those other perspectives really helps you see that no one country is like the center of the universe. Number 2, that goes kind of along with this patriotism, is this sort of hero worship and valorization of police and the military. I mean, it's one thing to be respectful of the military. I think that's appropriate and that's fine. But I think people in the US who are born and raised there, you're really like hit over the head with this propaganda. The US military is the heroes. We are always doing the right thing. We are going in and saving other countries. And this persistent narrative of the inherent goodness of the US military also includes the police. One of the first reality TV shows was Cops. It was people filming, people getting arrested, and this was before body cam footage and everything. We supposedly have this thing where you're innocent until proven guilty, but the police are never seen as being in the wrong. If they do something wrong against their code or against the law, they don't usually go to trial. It's very rare that police get punished for their overly aggressive behavior, for hurting people, for arresting the wrong person, breaking into people's houses. And they like to argue that police are always putting their lives on the line. The whole reason that the job of police is seen as so dangerous is because of number 3, which is gun culture and our lack of gun regulations. In a lot of states, there aren't a lot of regulations and who can have a gun or any background checks or anything. The fact that there are actually more guns in the US than people, I think that is what promotes a lot of the fear in our society. And every other week, it seems there's another person going into schools and shooting up kids. And rather than regulating these weapons, they will force kids to have these drills of like, let's pretend that someone's coming in to kill us all. I mean, it's like a horror show. In no other modern society do you have to worry about your kids going to school and not coming home. And it's because there are so many guns in the country and there are so few regulations. I think that's the reason that so many people own guns, is because they're afraid of someone else having a gun. I think it just creates this atmosphere of just being on edge and always being fearful. And it's another reason why people are afraid of the police, because the police are trained to be afraid of people, because they're always thinking someone could be a threat, someone could have a gun. Honestly, like, that is one of the main reasons I feel much safer when I'm outside of the US, because you just don't see as much of that happening. The gun culture, the school shooting, you can ask anyone around the world, that is not a normal part of any culture except for the US. And the reason you won't ever see that change, I don't think, is number 4, is how the corporations really control the government. I don't know if this is up for debate. We do call ourselves a democracy, but really part of the reason that there aren't any gun regulations is because one of the biggest donors to politicians, they call them lobbyists, the people that help write the laws to promote their own corporate interests, is the National Rifle Association, the companies that make the guns. I think even people who own guns, most of them would vote and would want more strict regulations so that not anyone could just have them and use them wherever they want and cause lots of tragedy all over the country. I know there's corruption in politics in most countries, probably on some level, but the fact that corporations are legally allowed to donate as much as they want to political campaigns, and they have basically unlimited funds, some of them, that's why you see there are more and more regulations that are just favoring corporations versus people. That's why corporations pay less taxes. That's why the minimum wage has never gone up in the last 20 something years. The healthcare system is privatized and not a publicly funded system that can benefit everyone. It's not because people want other people to suffer. It's really because the corporations, they just have had a chokehold on our government for so long. Having to pay for basic human rights, I think, is a uniquely American thing. Having to pay for healthcare, having to pay for education, all of these things that are publicly funded, government funded in a lot of other countries, at least partially, are just, they're privatized. The voice of the people should be more powerful than these corporations. But at this point, the entire system would need to change for that to happen. But number 5, I think, is part of the reason that this whole system keeps going like this. There is so much hidden propaganda in the US. People don't notice it because we are force-fed so much advertising and marketing, and that's number 5 on my list. Advertising is everywhere, not just on your computer, on your TV, but when you're driving around, there are billboards everywhere. On the side of the building, there will be like just ads plastered everywhere. When I was growing up, I went to a public school. There was soda machines in the school. You could go to the school cafeteria for lunch, but you could also buy Taco Bell or Pizza Hut from a little food cart that was just out every single day at the school. You could either get a personal pizza or you could get a bean and cheese burrito. If you had the money, you could buy fast food and drink your soda every single day from 12, 13, and 14 years old. And it was seen as completely normal. I don't know if they still do that now, but that's how pervasive advertising and marketing was growing up. It was literally in your school. A lot of the things that we eat in the US, how we eat, it's due to advertising. So the sugary breakfast cereals like Fruit Loops and Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, those were all advertised to kids. They had cartoon characters advertising these breakfast cereals, things that you ate every day. They put them in places in the supermarket at the level that small children can see them. I think that there's more regulations in other countries for the types of things that are allowed to be advertised. In Italy, I never see advertisements for prescription drugs. In the US, it's every other ad is like for another drug and saying, ask your doctor about this. Basically asking people to diagnose themselves and then asking their doctor about a certain drug. The system is all about making money, and it's not necessarily about health. I think that contributes to a lot of the propaganda we get. If you're being advertised and influenced from a very young age, I think it gets harder and harder to distinguish what is a company telling me something that they say is good for me versus what this politician is saying that they will do for me versus what we see as the top story on the evening news. You're in just like one big consumer marketplace in the US. Like, it's really hard to know what to believe, and it's really hard to think for yourself. Advertising is sort of a psychological thing. People use shopping and overspending as a coping mechanism because of number 6. I've talked about this before. The work culture in the US is very intense. People are expected to dedicate their entire lives to work. work and always go above and beyond because we don't have as many legal protections that favor employees. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 10% of wage and salary workers in the U.S. are members of unions. You have to really work really hard just to keep your job that you have. Most states in the U.S. have what's called at-will employment laws, which means that the employee can leave for any reason, which is great, but also the employer has the right to get rid of you for any reasons. It's happened to me very abruptly. I was called into a meeting at 9 a.m. and then by 10 a.m. I didn't have a job. I had to turn in my computer, my phone, and everything related to work. There's no rule that you have to get any sort of compensation when you get laid off. There's no rule that they have to give you any notice. And another thing that I think most people are really shocked by is the fact that there are no federal mandates for maternity leave or sick leave or vacation time. You can work for an employer for years and not get a single paid vacation. Some employers, when there are rules about vacation time or paid time off, they will only apply those rules to full-time employees. So they will keep most of their workforce at the part-time level so that they don't have to pay for your health care. Some companies will give you paid time off if you are full-time, but they will just hire a bunch of part-time people, which is why a lot of Americans will have like 2 or 3 or 4 part-time jobs because you can't make enough money at one part-time job. And in many industries like retail, hospitality, and food service, there just aren't enough full-time positions to go around. Another thing about US employment law is that if you're on a salary and you're like at the managerial level or higher, you don't get paid for overtime. That's why Americans will work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and that will be a normal thing for them and expected of your employer, but they don't have to pay you anymore. I know other countries really do have strict laws about this, which is why people don't tend to work over their 40 hours or 38 hours or however long their work week is. I think that's more fair. If I'm going to be working over 40 hours a week sometimes, I want to be paid for those hours. I think that should be completely normal. Number 7, I kind of talked about this already, was the healthcare industry is privatized and there is no public option for the average person. So if you're lucky enough, it's paid for by your employer, but otherwise you're on your own. People say other countries have higher taxes and that's why they have public health care, but they don't consider that what you're paying for in healthcare and health insurance, even when you have a job, the job will not cover your entire health insurance. Usually the employee has to pay for some portion of it anyway. So if you count all the amount that you pay into health insurance in the US, it's way, way more than what you would pay in taxes in another country that has a national healthcare system. The default for at least most European countries, if you don't have a job or if you have a job that doesn't provide those benefits, then you get access to the public healthcare system. And that seems more intuitively right, that you should be covered by whatever you pay in taxes. I know that I paid about the same amount of taxes that I pay here in the US, and I never had access to healthcare unless I paid for it. Another big issue is that if you lose your job for any reason, you also lose your healthcare. People will stay in jobs for years that they do not like, that is burning them out, but they can't lose their healthcare. So it's really hard once you're in that cycle of having your healthcare all tied to your job. It's very hard to just quit and do your own thing and start like freelancing or take a less stressful job that maybe makes less money. All of that can always be stressful. But I think in the US specifically, it's more stressful because of how suddenly you can just lose everything. Those are just a few of the many things that I think are completely normalized in the US for some reason, but would be seen as completely insane in most of the world. It's been hard for me to really articulate all of the reasons that I left the US and why I don't think I could ever move back. So I want this channel more to focus on my future and things that I'm doing now that I live here in Italy, and not so much the past, but I'm never going to stop being from the US, and so I'm never going to stop caring what happens there. And I'm sure there's some things that I missed, so if you want to add any of those below, feel free to post in the comments. If you haven't already, you can watch my previous videos on how I got my dual citizenship and all the other various events that led up to me actually deciding to move to Italy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.